And once again, welcome to the Link Online.
Hi. Well, how come we have no sound with these pictures?
Well, the sound is on. You can't hear it, but the sound is on. It's there.
It's in your headphones?
Yeah, but it's in this
Okay, you're the only one with an earphone. Okay,
Yes.
like Anderson Cooper.
Well, I paid my dues.
Tie yourself to a tree during a hurricane and you can get ahead.
Well, who was it? Was that whose joke was that?
It happened.
But and the guy, I was just watching a stand-up comedian. He says, you know what? That's all great. You want to prove that you're the tough guy and you can withstand the hurricane, but that's not going to help you when the hurricane blows a Volvo against you.
Okay, but it didn't blow a Volvo against Ole Anderson. Look at him now, man.
Well, there you go. Anyway,
Prime time, cable news.
surprisingly enough, this is a show about news from Canada.
Yeah.
And here to tell us all about it, we have Vincenzo Morello,
Hey!
Terry Hay,
Hey!
me, Mark Montgomery, and in the control room once again we have Carl Boulanger, Pierre-Luc Blais, and the man we call
The man who makes it all happen.
the Marquis de Montreal,
The Marquis de Montreal.
the officier de l'office, and a man we often refer to simply as Your Lordship,
That's right.
Pierre Zitil.
He's now in control of all the ballpoint pens, too. Hey, have you seen him in his desk lately?
Look at this. I got one.
Did you get one?
I
Oh,
got one,
okay.
yes.
All right.
I gotta get one too.
He takes, there's nothing he doesn't control.
Yeah, well, see, if you treat him nice, you get the earpiece, you see?
Okay, and you get a ballpoint pen for good behavior.
All right, on the interesting items we have. Oh, you know what? I saw today, by the way, coming in, at the front of our building, by the way,
Yes.
there are big billboards advertising the TV shows and the radio shows and the hosts and everything else that this corporation produces. Except this, where we are now, is eventually going to be condos. This building is sold, it's gone, it's history, and sometime this year, we're going to be kicked out, and they're going to start construction of an enormous condo complex. So instead of radio programs or TV programs on the billboards out the
Spats.
front,
It'll be spats. Domestic spats.
It'll be what they have.
Every apartment will be mic'd. Okay.
Now you're talking about that city in Toronto, the alphabet smart
Spats.
city. No, they've got a picture of a giant condo there, so that's what this is going to be. It's going to
A
be like
giant condo.
Yeah, so that's
Well,
that's the
It's
future.
going to look different? Oh, you mean the interior?
No, the outside. Everything's
but
changing.
that's the
outside's
same.
changing.
Everything's changing. No, this is
The
not.
outside is
no,
gonna
you got-
change too?
You got to go look at the billboard.
Okay.
And if you're on Google Street View, maybe they'll update the photo and you drive by and you might be able to see the all of that has nothing whatsoever to do with the show today. Vincenzo,
Well, it
you're going to be
does,
going
it
to the
does.
moon.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that. What's happening on the moon?
So basically, the Canadian Space Agency has a goal to eventually make it to the moon, and I guess, pardon my pun, but they're one step closer with their Lunar Exploration Accelerator program, or called LEAP. And basically, the LEAP program has set aside $150 million to over the next 5 years to give us small and medium-sized businesses a chance to develop new technology with an interest in space travel, obviously, in fields like artificial intelligence, robotics, and health. And I spoke with Eric Dupree, the Director of Space Exploration Development at the CSA, and he had this to say about the program.
LEAP is a 5-year program. And as I said, under that program, we intend to develop novel technologies. We also intend to provide opportunities for Canadian organizations to fly their technologies in space and to demonstrate that they work. And we also intend to send a number of Canadian payloads to the surface of the moon or to the lunar orbit. You were referring to rovers. Obviously, rovers are one of our niche technology areas. This is a natural evolution from our robotics heritage. But there's a lot more to this. And as you can see from the list of contracts that were awarded under this request for proposal, we have quite a broad diversity or rich diversity of expertise in Canada that could be sought after. The recipients of the contract or the themes include science instruments such as infrared spectrometers or neutron spectrometers, lunar impactors. So there's a lot of expertise resident in Canada that could position us for future missions.
You say that the LEAP is a 5-year program. What exactly does that mean? Is that like 5 years of research and development? Or like by the end of 5 years is going to be like practical deployment, I guess?
By the end of the 5 years, we will have flown several times to the moon.
Okay.
We will have sent payloads to the moon and also have demonstrated new technologies in space to prepare for future missions beyond this 5-year horizon.
So now we'll have to play the waiting game to see if Canada is able to actually get to the moon within the next 5 years. Hopefully, I'm rooting for them.
Well, here's a quiz question for you. What country's work was the very first man-made object to land on the moon?
It was Canada, no? I want to say.
It was Canada because, and I'll tell you why.
We had Dilem?
Well, a
developed the LEM?
Canadian designed the lunar module.
Yeah.
Somebody used to work on the Aero project. There were several
Oh,
topics.
jeez, Montgomery.
You
always find a way to bring it in, don't you?
Okay, yeah, but here's the thing. The landing legs for the module were made by a Canadian company here in Quebec.
Wow.
So when the lander landed, the first thing to touch the moon was a Canadian object.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought?
Eh?
There you go.
Boy, oh boy.
So that's a little fact you can use at your local party and say, by the way, did you know this?
You could probably win some money, right, if it was late enough in the evening at the party.
Well, I wonder if Alex Trebek knows about this.
Alex Trebek?
I would
He's a
assume
Canadian,
so.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sure. It could be a question,
That's
Alex, what Canadian lunar lander legs were the first to touch the moon? What was? There you go. By the way, there's another aspect. The Canadian scientist is going to be on the Mars mission team when they go up to get some rocks because he's a geologist, a space geologist, and they've selected him to help drive and choose the locations where the Mars rover is going to drill for rocks.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Now, my question with all this is, to both of you, I mean, there's a lot of dough that's going here, right, to do this. Shouldn't we clean up the oceans first? I just did a story today on sewers and the gazillions of liters of sewage that goes across Canada. And what about public housing? Shouldn't we clean up the earth first? Couldn't that money be better used? Eh? What do you say, Montgomery?
I'm not gonna say you're wrong.
And what do you say, Morello?
Same. All good questions. We should be.
So answer them, boys.
Well, I mean, you have Montreal here, which is a major urban center, and it has a waste treatment plant, right?
Yeah.
But it's only a primary treatment plant, so it just takes the big stuff out. You know, it doesn't really treat the water that we pour. This giant city of Montreal dumps partially treated stuff into the river all the time.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if the world starts to listen to our little friend from Stockholm, right?
Well,
I mean, come on, folks.
Well, you know what?
The people that go to Mars or the moon, they're not going to have a place to come back to if we keep it up.
Well,
Isn't that the plot of Interstellar?
That's kind of the thing that science fictions have been saying for years. Once we mess up this Earth, we have to get out and find somewhere else.
To mess up. Yeah.
Well, part of a good portion of the atmosphere on the moon is exhaust from the rocket. So there you have already.
Really?
That's true.
Oh, because it doesn't lift away?
Well, it's no. Well, the rocket lifted away, but the exhaust, because of gravity in the moon, it's part of the moon's atmosphere is now exhaust.
I don't know.
So
he's a wealth of information. You'll find us out, Vincent.
I'm good at Trivial Pursuit.
And mentioning in space, you'll hear about the Arrow. What's it called? The Arrow.
The
Arrow.
What is it? The Avro Arrow.
Okay.
Stay tuned for more highlights from today's show. This actually, that question you pose kind of ties into the next story, which is people are losing trust in institutions to deal with crises. That's coming up next.
Why.
Well, having explored space and sewage in the last few minutes, a new international study
But enough about me, ladies and gentlemen.
Waiter. A new international...
We're having fun.
Keep it together, guys. Keep it together.
Let's watch ourselves.
This is almost like the good old days of radio.
This is a big building.
This is almost like the good old days of radio, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
now they can see us. The trouble with seeing us is we don't look like what we sound like. That's the trouble. People have images.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I look at me and I say, is
a
that
lot of
me?
people mix me up with Richard Gere, you know.
Oh, I know. Or Liam Neeson, as the case may be. There you go.
Liam Neeson.
I won't comment on those claims.
Respect your elders, young man. Okay.
Well, anyway, this is a new international study that shows people in countries around the world are slowly losing trust in government, business, the media, and NGOs. And those are the 4 categories studied by the Edelman Company. That's a U.S.-based firm, international marketing and PR, that kind of thing. Now, in Canada, they found, for example, one of the items they discovered was that 76% of people, and this is probably something that you are well aware of, fear for their jobs and their financial futures. Canadians are losing trust in institutions to deal with all these crises, such as government, for example. And also, here's another interesting thing, generally around the world, people are kind of losing the feeling that capitalism is actually a good thing. They're saying that capitalism is now doing more harm than good. So these are some of the findings of the survey. This is the 20th annual Trust Barometer survey from Edelman, and I spoke to Lisa Kimmel, the CEO of Edelman Canada.
We create what we call a trust index, which is the average trust scores across the 4 institutions that we measure: media, government, business, and NGOs. And then we put together an index of the 28 markets that we look at globally. And for the last couple of years, amongst the general population in Canada, Canada has fallen into that neutral category, but it has actually declined year over year by 3 points for the general population. And then we also look at what we call the informed public, which are those people who are college educated. They're in the top quartile of household incomes in their age group, and they're also higher consumers of media. That informed public is generally trusting of institutions, and they are in Canada, but we also saw a 7-point year-over-year drop as well. And I think Canadians are questioning the ability of our institutions, and in particular government, to actually address those challenges.
Well, another chart in the report is ethics. What is it actually measuring?
So what we looked at this year for the first time were what are the actual drivers or dimensions of trust. And the 2 that are most important are competence, so the ability for an institution or an organization to actually get things done, and secondly, ethics. Will they do the right thing?
Now, Ms. Kimmel, one of the things I understand also is that the idea of capitalism is becoming less trustworthy, and not just in Canada, but worldwide.
It is the case. So in Canada specifically, and this was the first time that we asked this question, but 47% of Canadians believe that capitalism as it exists today does more harm than it does good, which is very troublesome.
So to sum up, what would we take from this? I mean, I'm sort of understanding that there seems to be a growing sense of dissatisfaction with the way the world is working, and even here in Canada.
Correct. Because of all of this anxiety, the fears that people have at a personal level around their future economic prosperity, their job in the future, that we don't trust organizations, institutions to actually address these challenges, that really it's a call to action to leaders across all institutions to step up, to lead with purpose.
Where does the growing inequality gap fit into all of this? I mean, you have, for example, the 1%, the CEOs and other uber rich people seeming to get richer and richer while the middle class is shrinking and the lower class is growing, kind of thing.
It absolutely does. And so one of the issues when we ask respondents about the need for CEOs to step up, one of the issues that they actually identify as an issue to take a stand on is around income inequality specifically, because that's the kind of issue that drives that trust inequality gap. So it is certainly something that does need to be addressed.
Who's doing it now?
All right, that was Lisa Kimmel, CEO of Edelman Canada. And as you can see on the screen there, there's some graphs and other things. If you go to the website, you'll find the link to the actual study. But it's a little bit disconcerting. I mean, you know, people are starting to say we've got all these crises, and are people dealing with it properly? The people who have the authority and the power to deal with it. I mean, we're losing faith in government. We're losing faith or trust in business. Because one of the things she said was to do the right thing. So, you get to the point where I say, is business actually doing the right thing for not only their clients, but for the world kind of thing, and their workers?
It started with Reagan. It started with the trickle down. You remember the time when you used to go into a bank and you were a client and you were the one that counted? Now the only thing that counts is profits for the stockholders. I'm sorry. I mean, that's the model right now.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that either, because I've seen the same sort of thing. Is they're reducing the personnel that serves the clients. They're telling you to go to machines all the time, and I mean,
it's out of control, Montgomery. I mean, it really is.
You know what? What was that film? I'm not going to take it anywhere.
That's Network.
Network. There you go.
People are saying that about this show right now. I think they're not going to take it anymore.
Throwing computers out of windows.
Cut that show. Shut it down.
But the other, I was pointing to you at the beginning, saying something because when I said 76% of people are fear for their jobs, you are unfortunately a member of the gig economy, right? What's that like for you?
It's been fine for the last few weeks, considering I've had like a solid month of work. But no, it's not fun being part of the gig economy. You want something more stable, so you could financially plan ahead. Get ready for the future. But yeah, well, it is what it is, I guess. There's not much I could do right now.
Well, but I mean, often people in politicians and business and so on say, oh, that's what the young people want. They want the gig economy. They want the freedom.
Sure they do. They really want that, yeah.
But you have no benefits, right? You have no... Can you even save with this kind of thing for the future?
Luckily, I'm lucky enough where I still live at home, so I don't have that many expenses. However, eventually I would like to be financially independent, so definitely a stable job is something I'm looking for in the future.
Well, we're pulling for you, kid.
Thanks.
There you go.
If I hadn't cut that seminar, that career planning seminar way back in Ohio, back in ' you think I'd be here right now? No. I'd be clawing my way to the top.
As you are now.
As I am now.
We're going to come back and we're going to talk about a really interesting situation that happened. It's a Cinderella story, right, in hockey?
Well, sort of.
Well, sort of. Okay.
Cinderfella.
Cinderella. That's coming up. Well, I like to call it a Cinderella story. I mean, because you go from sort of rags to riches. Well, not quite rags to riches, but from being a complete unknown to a superstar on TV and everything else. Because this guy was on one of those late night talk shows.
Okay, what you're referring to is our friend David Ayres, who every hockey rink, every professional hockey team has to have a backup goalie. An emergency goalie. They all have all NHL teams have a backup goalie. They carry two goalies now. Okay, but there has to be a guy in the rink in case anybody ever gets hurt. I mean, in case two guys get hurt on the same team. And so last Saturday night, old David Ayres, I think he's 42 now. He's got this job. He works at Ryerson, I believe, as in charge of things of buildings and stuff.
Ryerson here in Canada.
And he's a former Zamboni driver. Still drives the old Zamboni for Toronto Marley games. He's the backup. He's a practice goalie for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So he's sitting there minding his own business. Last Saturday night, the mighty Carolina Hurricanes are in Toronto to play the Leafs, and down goes goalie number 1 for the Hurricanes. Down goes goalie number 2 for the Hurricanes. All of a sudden, old David Ayres' cell phone lights up. He's got to go into the game midway through the second period.
How did they know about him, though?
Hey?
How did they know about him, by the way? Somebody must have checked to say, oh, yeah.
No, he's there. He's on call.
Oh, he's on call for the Hurricanes?
No.
For both teams.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, it's always been a tradition.
Yeah.
Okay, you always have to have a back. I mean, in the old days, mind you, I like to talk about the old days, back in the old days, before they put the masks on there, the goalies, before that Jacques Plante there, you put the old goalie mask on there, Okay, so then it happened before. They only carried one goalie in those days. They didn't wear a mask, and so it happened a few times that are really, really famous. Once in the 1920s to Lester Patrick, who's in the Hall of Fame. I believe he was the owner of the Rangers or something. And there was a guy named Ross Lefty Wilson. Lefty Wilson. That doesn't refer to his politics. He was the trainer for the Detroit Red Wings in their golden era in the 50s. Gordie Howe. He's the greatest of them all. Sid Abel, all those guys. Okay. He stepped in 3 times without the mask to fill in when I think it was probably Sawchuk that got hurt. And then, as Dutil reminded me, because I was doing this story, there was a guy named, what was his name? Scott Foster, a couple of years ago, came out of the stands to play for the Chicago Blackhawks. Okay? And let's not forget, now, this is probably a guy, this is a name. Here's a trivia question for you. Who has the shortest NHL career of all time? I'll tell you who. Jorge Alves. He's an equipment manager who played 7.6 seconds for the Hurricanes in 2016 at the end of a game.
It took him longer to put on.
He's in the books. He's in the record books. 7.6.
It took him longer to lace up his skates.
That's right.
Than he was on the ice.
I think they were just doing him a anyway. So anyway, our boy Ayers gets in. The first 2 shots go by him, and then the boys, I really love hockey. So hockey players are pretty cool guys. They got it. They went into playoff mode. And they really protected this guy. They brought out of the stands, this 42-year-old guy, and the shots weren't that hard, but he shut them out after giving up the first 2 shots on goals. He shut out the Leafs the rest of the way, and now he's famous. He went on all the talk shows in the United States. They gave him a day. They gave him a day in Raleigh. Is it North Carolina or North Carolina in Raleigh? And I believe he's going to Regina this week. His stick is going to the Hall of Fame. And here's the deal. I mean, it's just a great story. Out of nowhere, Joe Schmo, James Thurber, Walter Mitty. Okay, now here's the thing. Now, the boys have thought about this, and you talk about not trusting anything anymore. The NHL now is considering legislation to forbid this kind of thing ever happening again, because we don't want this happening again. We don't want real life on our rinks. Because guys are betting money, right? We're putting money on these games. We don't want some guy. The thing is, he won. That's the thing. I mean, if you're giving up 25 goals, that's something else. Yeah. So now we'll probably have legislation next week forcing the teams to carry a third goaltender. That's what they need, a third goaltender. That's what this world needs, Montgomery, is a third goaltender.
We need backup on this show.
Well, never mind the emergency goaltenders anymore. An emergency goaltender, third goaltender. So anyway, it's really fantastic. Did we see pictures of? Oh, here we are. Here we and the guys. This is the dream of every Canadian to somehow fantasize. I think he's going to get on the rink and somehow do something really, really special, which is exactly what he did. Yeah. And all of a sudden he's famous. He's got to go back to work.
But he actually did. I should say he did a pretty good job, though. He
did a decent job. I didn't see the game. People tell me that.
I saw a couple of highlights, and he was blocking a couple. Of shots.
He's a big guy.
Yeah.
But and the thing is, I just looked it up. Apparently he was a former senior player, played in the Allen Cup, stuff like that. He was 0-7 or something career. So he's not even that good a goaltender. But it's pure Walter Mitty. It's pure fantasy. What happened to this guy? And you know what? Canadians know about this. I mentioned it. I sent it to a friend of mine who's of a certain age, and he said, "Don't forget Lefty Wilson." Everybody remembers Lefty Wilson. Don't forget Mr. Patrick and Dutil. By God bless Dutil. You can't get anything by Dutil. Dutil remembered Scott Foster, right? I'd never heard because it was after my time. But during my time, which is the 50s, Lefty Wilson. Lefty, they called him. I wonder why. What do you think?
I think it's unfortunate that the NHL is going to ban this kind of thing.
It's ridiculous.
Because it makes such great headlines.
It's a great story. It's like those games are endless. And every Canadian's going to remember this guy's name forever. And Brindamont, the coach.
And he's Canadian.
The coach of the...
And he's Canadian.
That's right. It's like the legs on the moon. Okay.
And legs on the ice.
Legs on the ice. And Brindamont said, you know what? The coach of the Hurricanes, he was a pretty darn good hockey player in his day. He said, you know what? And essentially he said, these games, basically the regular season goes on forever. This guy gave us something to remember. And we as a team and all of us are going to remember this forever. and it's true.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, if you legislate, if you say, from now on, and you prevent this kind of thing from ever happening again, this is great advertising, great promotion for
And you
the
wonder
league.
why people don't trust institutions.
Well, there you go.
There you go. I rest my case.
And it would make NHL right now is the only league that does this, though. In the NFL, you have backup quarterbacks. In the MLB, you have backup pitchers. And even if everyone, and in soccer, even like some players will like put on the goalie gloves and go in nets. Hockey's the only sport that has this.
But this is the emergency guy.
Yeah. No,
the
but
guy in the stands,
but
okay?
even you have a third string quarterback in the NFL and feet goes down,
Then
they'll put someone else.
Yeah, that's right.
They'll take off a wide receiver and put him on the
That's right.
on the field.
No. It's a great story, and I mean, regular seasons now that everybody gets into now that half the teams at least get into the playoffs, the regular season is beyond tedious. It's beyond tedious. It goes on and on and on. Once upon a time, when only a few teams got in, then the regular season meant something. But I mean, here's the thing. Here's the thing about sports and hockey, for instance. Okay, everybody that goes to a hockey game in real life, I mean, in the stands, should be paid as a TV extra. And here's why. Okay, because you're watching a hockey game, and what happens? 6 minutes into the game, whistle. The guys just skate around for 2 minutes while there's a commercial on for the people on television.
Yeah.
It's insane. I mean, it's like doing Hamlet. To be or not to be, whistle. We got to stop, take a break. That is, and we're coming back now. We'll be back after this. That is the question, whether 'tis nobler of mind to suffer the art. Okay, so there you go. So people in the stands are completely disrespected. I mean, it has the stoppage in play has nothing to do with what's going on the ice. Right?
Well, it's kind of like the talk shows, Johnny Carson and that. They'd say, we'll be right back. We'll be right back after this message. And then you have, for the audience watching in the theater, they sit there and the band plays for 2 minutes. And then he comes back and he goes, we're back and we're talking to Terry Haig. And,
But what bugs me about that is when they do that, say it again.
And we're back with Terry Haig.
And the two guys are the guests, they come in and they whisper to leave out the audience. Then, right? They lean over and share something secret that they're not going to share with the audience. That really drives me wild, too. It's like dealing with Dutil at his desk, right? You go up there, you want a ballpoint pen. What you got to do? What you got to do around here to get anything done?
This is inside information, behind-the-scenes activities.
There's a magic password.
There is.
But he's my cousin. He's my wife's cousin. So
I was always told the magic word was please. And
please?
And thank you.
Doesn't do a thing with Dutil. No. You got to do better than that. You got to entertain him.
A sawbuck works much better.
A sawbuck, yeah. All right. A Finn will usually do it better.
Where's the show gone? What happened?
Well, listen, here's what happens now. What was the most interesting story that you had this week that you think of?
That's a super good question.
This is because we got to talk about the show and what's coming up on the weekend because we have the highlights on the weekend. So some of the things that you might.
Oh, the coronavirus is coming.
That's a big story, sure. Yeah. Because now it's spreading. No matter what they're trying to do, it's still spreading. So
yeah.
Well, we just got our first case in Montreal.
Quebec,
yeah. So.
Are you?
There's no pity in the naked city, I'll tell you. That's a good title for a tune. Okay.
Other than that, what was their story besides the coronavirus?
There's been lots of good. I like my friend David Ayres. The goalie. Just in case you forgot.
And of course,
that's his name. Okay.
Yeah.
Bing.
No, but of course, if you want to find out more about any of the stories we have, you can go to the website.
I'm sure they want to now after this show, right?
No, come on. There's lots of interesting things on the website. Lots of interesting stories.
Oh, it's a good website. It's a good service, man. Pick it up.
Yeah.
All you got to do is punch a button, right?
And if you want to, you can download
on your phone.
Download the app, which is on the right-hand side of the page, and you can get all the stories that way as well. So
and Vin is teaching me how to get onto my email at the office from my phone at home. I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I'm on the cutting edge of technology, Montgomery.
This is the advantage of having a young, in-tune person.
That's right.
There, well, he knows the stuff.
He's an inspiration to us all.
Am I?
So anyway, we have interesting stories on there. We had the coronavirus, certainly.
Say what?
Coronavirus, which is interesting because it's not the coronavirus, but it's in fact a coronavirus because
it's COVID-19.
Yeah. But they were calling it the coronavirus, but in fact,
they call it a lot of things.
Coronavirus is a family, and this is one of the family that is
Pathogen.
pathogen. That's a very good word.
I like to throw big words out.
Well, that's just good. Yeah. So anyway,
That's my friends.
we'd like to say hello also to listeners on World Radio Paris, the shortwave service from Germany, and our friends at Kauri 97.5 in Nigeria.
And I'm going to do a Don Cherry.
Is that really the person you want to emulate?
Yeah, well, all right.
Salut, Patty.
All right, so
Paris.
now for Vincenzo and for Terry and for myself and for Pierre-Luc and Carl and Commander Dutil.
Commander Dutil.
In the control room.
I feel so much better when he's in that control.
Take care until next week. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
So now we can talk about